over to you.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome. It's really nice to see so many of you here, nice and early in the morning. I will just share my screen and then we'll get started. Okay, hopefully you can hear that okay. Right, it's so fantastic to see lots of you here. We really appreciate you coming to join us to learn a little bit more about phonics. And I'm really excited to have some colleagues here as well to support the conversation and to answer any questions that you may have. Sorry, I think my internet may have dropped out, but hopefully I am back. If you could just give me a thumbs up if you can hear me okay.
Yeah,
great.
Good, Caroline. Strong start.
Good start to the morning. Okay, welcome everybody. It's really, really lovely to welcome all of you here and to continue our conversation about phonics. I've got some fantastic colleagues here with me as well, Mridula and Jinny, who you will meet shortly, who are going to support our conversation and answer any questions that you may have. Okay, so if questions do come up throughout our workshop, then please put them into the chat box and we will have a Q&A section at the end so that we can make sure that we answer any questions and we may cover your questions as we go through. So we will support that session at the end. Okay, so some of our aims for today's session. Sorry, just letting people in as we go as well. Make sure everybody can enjoy this. Okay, so some of our aims for today's session, we are going to share the basics around phonics and some of the useful terms that you may hear either in the classroom or with your child at home. We're going to share how we teach and assess phonics from the school side and the kind of system that you might hear from your class teacher. And we're going to be sharing some activities, resources and ideas to support reading and writing at home. Because I know from the feedback that we've seen so far, that's what a lot of you are interested in, which is really exciting. So just to start off, I'm going to give a bit of an introduction to phonics, what is phonics and how the system works. Okay, right, thank you everyone. Okay, so let's start with what phonics is and how it works as a system. Phonics is a way of teaching children how to read and write. It helps children to hear, identify, and use different sounds that distinguish one word from another in the English language. Basically, by teaching phonics, we are giving the children a tool that they can use to independently access reading and writing. We describe it as the lock that can unlock the English language. And it is just one tool. There are obviously other ways of teaching reading. I'm sure that some of us learnt in different ways, but it has now been proven to be the most effective way of teaching reading. So Guff and Tummer came up with the simple view of reading that summarizes how the different parts of reading instruction can come together to result in a successful child who can read and comprehend what they're reading. So the decoding is the phonics skills, being able to decode and break down the words to read a sentence. And then the language comprehension is understanding the meaning of what they're reading. And if a child or a person can bring those two skills together, then they will be able to successfully understand and comprehend what they're reading. So that's our aim. They also develop 4 types of readers. That's very helpful for us to identify where our children are at and also see what extra support they might need. So a child that may be starting out or maybe struggling with reading may be in the poor decoding and poor language comprehension section. And this is where a child does not have sufficient phonics skills to decode yet, and they also don't understand the meaning of what they're reading. Some children will have poor decoding, so maybe early on in their phonics journey, but may have very good language comprehension. So if they are read to, or if they listen to a story, then they may be able to show a very good understanding of what they've heard. On the other end of the scale, some children have very good decoding skills, so they're technically very good readers, but they don't understand what they're reading, and they won't be able to explain it back to an adult. And so the sweet spot, the bit that we are aiming for, is children that are good decoders and they have that good backing of language comprehension behind them as well. The phonics can obviously help with the decoding, but we do need to teach language comprehension separately as well to ensure that our children have both of those skills. Okay, just a small welcome to those of you who have joined us since. We've just got started, so hopefully you can catch up okay. Okay, so that gives you a bit of background about how we kind of address our readers and what early readers can look like. So now let's have a look at phonics as a system. So what is phonics? It's a system of relationships between letters and sounds in any given language. So it's the ability for our students to look at that collection of letters there, T-I-O-N, and see it as a sound, shun, rather than the separate letters. Or look at these letters, I-G-H, and read them as the single sound, I. And we'll just have a little look at this video that will just break it down for you a little bit further.
Phonics is a way of teaching children to read and write. Here's how it works. English is made up of around 44 different sounds. We call these sounds phonemes. Like all languages, English has an agreed code for how we write these sounds down. Each phoneme, each sound, can be represented by one or more letters. The letters and groups of letters that represent a sound are called graphemes. G, A, D, E, N. Garden. Sometimes the grapheme representing a phoneme is represented by just one letter, G or D. But sometimes it's more than one letter that represents a single sound. It might be two letters, R. This is called a digraph. Sometimes a phoneme is represented by three letters. This is called a trigraph. Such as the I in delightful, or the air in fairy.
Right, so that's introduced us to a few of the key words and terms that we use around phonics. And I'm just going to go into those a little bit deeper now so that you're all clear on how we use them and why we use them. So I'll now take you through some of the key vocabulary related with the phonics program. And these are words or phrases that you may hear your class teacher using, or you may even hear your children using as well. So a phoneme is one unit of sound, and it's the smallest unit of sound that you can have. So for example, in the word cat, the smallest unit of sound would be k. That's one phoneme. A grapheme is the way that we write that sound. So it's the written representation. So for the sound k, the grapheme would be the way that we write the letter C. And often these are taught together. So the child will learn the phoneme and the grapheme at the same time. CVC is another short term that you may hear, and it stands for consonant, vowel, consonant. These are some of the first words that our children learn to put together, to blend and to segment. So for example, a CVC word could be cat. So you've got k, a, t. So let's look at a bit more detail on phonemes. Within our phonics curriculum, the children are taught 44 different phonemes, and this covers all of the different sounds that they'll need when they're reading. Some of these phonemes are a single sound or a single letter sound, like the k that we've just looked at, and some have got two letters to a single sound. This is called a digraph. So sh is one of the examples there. The S and the H both make up the sound sh, but it's still a phoneme, so a single unit of sound. If there's three letters that make up one sound, we call it a trigraph. And the example here would be the I sound that you get from IGH. At Middleton, we follow the letters and sounds curriculum. This is a British-based curriculum that was published in 2007, and it splits up phonics into different phases. And the different phases correlate with different grade groups. So I'll just quickly take you through the outline of it now, so you have an idea about the approach that we use. So it starts with phase 1, and this starts in nursery and K1. And this is all about children just identifying sounds and tuning in to the sounds that they may hear around them. So they may use things like alliteration, rhythm, and rhyme to really get into hearing the sounds around them. In phase 2, which comes into play in K1 and goes into K2 as well, you may hear, this is when we start with our single letter sounds. So there's 19 single letter sounds in phase 2. And this is also when the children start to do some segmenting words into separate sounds and blending them back together. So practicing those key skills. Phase 3 also comes in K1 and will go through into K2 and potentially grade 1. And this is the remaining 7 single letter sounds of the alphabet. And then we introduce digraphs as well. During this time, the children will be reading simple sentences, captions, and questions, as well as practicing their segmenting and blending. The reason that these phases go across lots of different grade groups for us is because we have children from lots of different educational backgrounds and educational systems. So we like to make sure that they're all in a confident place with their phonics before we move them on to the next phase. So after phase 3, we go into phase 4, which comes in K2. And by this point, all 44 new phonemes have been taught. So the focus is on blending and segmenting. And they really focus on the adjacent consonants. So for example, in the word swim, you've got the sw sound together, sw. So they practice blending those tricky consonants that are often hard to say and hard to read when we're just first starting out. This then takes us into phase 5, and this traditionally comes in grade 1. And phase 5 is all about learning different graphemes or different letter representations for sounds that the children already know. And there'll be different pronunciations in there as well. So for example, with the word blue, you may have b, l, oo, but you could also have a different grapheme to go with that oo sound. So if you had the word blue, like the wind blew, it would be b, l, oo, but you can see the EW makes up the digraph in the second word. Another example of different pronunciations would be low, l, o, and down, d, ow, n. So the O and the ow are different pronunciations for the same graphic, for the same digraph, sorry. And because of this, we start to build sound families to really give the children a good idea of how all of these different sounds slot in together. After this, we move into phase 6. And this is really when our children are becoming confident readers, their decoding is strong, and we're making the focus on reading comprehension. There'll also be some spelling rules in there, prefixes and suffixes. Okay, so I just wanted to share with you the Letters and Sounds resource website. Miss Jinny will go into a little bit more detail on this later. But this website just really clearly helps to break down the phases and helps for you to kind of see them in context, because it can obviously be a bit harder to understand when it's just attached with your grade. So as I said, Miss Jinny will share this a little bit later, but this is a really handy website to break down the phases and to provide games and resources to go with each phase. Okay, I'm going to hand over to Miss Mridula now, who's going to talk to us a little bit more about how we teach phonics in school. Miss Mridula.
Hello, thanks, Caroline. Hello, everybody. Happy to be here to partner with parents to see how we teach phonics. So in this section, I'm going to be talking about how do we actually teach phonics in class, what are the rules we apply, and also on how we do it at Middleton. What does phonics lesson look like in our school? Next slide, please. The content here is by Mr. Collins. So let's watch the first video.
Okay, so today I'm going to walk us through how we teach phonics here at Middleton. So the first sounds, set 1, so our phase 2 sounds. Once the children have a good grasp of the phase 2 sounds, we start blending them together to make words. And so, for example, as you see here on the slide, we have the word sat and pin. And this might look like sounding out each individual letter sound or phoneme. So we might, of course, we say the letter S, but the sound is S. So we go at, sat, and we keep repeating this process again and again with different simple consonant, vowel, consonant words like pin, p, n. So blending and segmenting are two of the most important skills that we teach when it comes to looking at phonics. These are the key skills that we need when we are reading. And how do we teach them? Well, it might include a variety of different ways. For segmenting, which would involve breaking up the different phonemes in the word. We might clap out or click out the sounds, or do different make different sounds as we do them. So for example, man, we might go ah, just to make it more memorable, or some sort of clap and click routine. It could also involve robot talking, different voices. I know in my class, sometimes we like to do like a silly voice, or we like to go different pitch, different tone, can go really high, really low, really quiet, really loud. We can go really fast, really slow, anything to make it more engaging. And it helps the kids to retain what they're learning as well. So blending here, it says blending phonemes together to make a word, and that's essentially the skill of how we put sounds together to read. And what do we do when we encounter a word we don't know? Well, as I'm sure we all do this when we are reading a book, or we come across a word we haven't learned, we stop and we start to break it up into its initial sounds, right? So if you think back to when you've read a book or even the newspaper or anything, and say, oh, I've never heard that word before. You know, it could be anything. And we start to break it up into its sounds to try and put it together to see if we can say it. And that essentially is segmenting. And so when we are segmenting and blending, we have these things, these useful visual cues called sound buttons. And sound buttons essentially allow us to see the phoneme, see how long or short it is. Is it quick? Is it a longer sound, or is it a shorter sound? So with pin, we see it's broken up into individual phonemes. And so we go p, and they're all quite short. So they only have one little sound button. So it's reminding us that, oh, I can put this word together to make the sounds. So in the word below, we have sheep, and sheep, we can, it has a longer sound button. So we know there we're dealing with a digraph, and the children know then, oh, this is a longer sound. Okay, so sh, e, p, and then they put it together to blend.
I was muted. Okay, I hope you were paying attention to that, because now it's your turn. I know all of us can read these words, but try and put yourself in the children's shoes and try and segment these words and then blend them to read them using the skills that you just learned in the previous video. So have a go at it, and then I will tell you if you're right or wrong. So you can just practice it with a partner or by yourself. Go ahead. All right, I hope you can manage that. Let me show you how we do it in class. So for example, with the first word on the left, we will first segment it into its individual sounds. So we will say ch, a, and then blend that together to say jam, to read it. The next word on the right is ch, and that blends together to read Jill. The word below, we segment it to its individual sounds like this, ch, et, and then we blend it together to read the word jet. So in this way, we always segment the words to sound them out, and then we blend them to read them. The last word is ch, ok, and then we blend it to read it as jog. All right, and now let's try the sound buttons on the right. Let's try and see if you can split these this word into its individual sounds using sound buttons. Have a go. Let's see if you got it right. Miss Caroline, can we? Yes, I hope you got that right. For wish, it splits up into, it segments itself into w, e, sh. And as you can see, you have single letter sounds and a digraph in that word. The next word is slightly harder. Let's see if you've got that right. You've got th, n, d, So we've segmented it, and then we're going to blend it to read it as thunder. I hope that was fun, because that's what we do in class. Next slide, please. And now we're going to see how a typical phonics class looks at our school. So let's enjoy this.
So a typical phonics session might look like it's daily, fun, fast-paced, and familiar. So essentially, it always follows a similar format. You look back at the sounds that we've already covered maybe that week, or the sounds we looked at the week before, just a quick review of those. It could be the children suggest words that have those sounds. We might look, and then we will introduce the new sound. So after we've looked at previous sounds, we'll introduce a new sound. The sound we did today or the other day was ow. So ow, that is in the word cow and wow and now. So we'll practice that sound by actions, songs, videos, and pictures. I know a favorite character that the children love to watch her YouTube videos is Geraldine the Giraffe. So if you check out Geraldine the Giraffe on YouTube, you will not be disappointed because it's comedy gold. And then after we have watched a video or sang a song or written down the words that contain that sound, then we practice identifying the phoneme or writing the grapheme for the sound. And this can involve writing sentences or having a picture. We had a picture of a cow in a gown with a frown. And essentially the children can practice writing the phoneme in a sentence. So that is a typical phonics session and how it is planned out, and it usually lasts no longer than 15 or 20 minutes. So it's quite quick, and this allows for it to maintain fresh all the time, stay fresh. So this is a phase 2 sound mat, and here you can see all the sounds that we do in the phase 2. And then we have the phase 2 and 3 sound and 5 sound mats here. So you can see that as we move on to phase 3 and 5, the sounds become more complex. And you have 2 vowel sounds together. So we have this sound here, E, which is actually EA together, but you pronounce only the E. And just a quick rhyme that helps the kids to remember: when 2 vowels go out walking, the first one does the talking. And you know, this is kind of song and that helps the children to remember those kind of phonics rules. And yeah, that's it. Over to Jinny.
Yeah. Oh, Jenny.
No. Sorry, I was gonna. I'll let Mridula end up, and then I will continue.
Thanks, Jinny. Sorry. Yeah, so I hope that was useful on how we do phonics in class. Most of the times we love our phonics sessions because there's a lot of singing, a lot of actions included, and we have a lot of fun in our phonics class. And now over to you, Jinny.
We're just going to move on quickly. Use the noise of 5 children. Anyway, we're going to do how we assess phonics, and I'll just let the video play and then we can continue.
Now that you know a little bit more about how we teach phonics in the classroom from Mr. Cullum, I'm going to take you through on how we assess the children. So we assess the children for a few simple reasons. One, we want to know how much they know, how much they can apply, and how we can take them further. The main goal of these assessments is to find the gaps in their learning and find out how we may be able to meet those needs. There are 3 ways we assess. One is the first way rather, is our regular formative assessment. This assessment is done informally. We kind of do this on the go throughout the day when the child uses his or her phonetical skill to read or to write. The second way is a phonics screening. This assessment is a more formal assessment. We've taken it from the British curriculum, and it is an assessment that is done one-on-one with the child. Basically, the child has to read 40 different words, half of which are real words and the other half being fake words, alien words or monster words like we like to call them. Now you might be thinking, what is the point of reading fake or made up words? And the answer is quite simple. With the real words, we run the risk of the child memorizing these words from before. Whereas with the fake words or the made up words or alien words like we like to call them, the child really is challenged to use those skills of segmenting, of blending, of chunking, of decoding, of trying to tear apart and figure out what those individual trigraphs or digraphs of phonemes are, and then putting them all together and using all these skills together. The last way is a PM benchmark reading assessment. Now, the reading assessment is a great way for us to gauge how the child may use these phonetical skills in a real-life situation, and it also helps us to gauge on how much the child may be able to read on their own independently and how much the child really understands what they're reading. Now that you know a little bit.
Okay, so as I mentioned, we do a phonics screening assessment in which we have 40 words, half of which are real words, half of which are alien monster words. And so I thought, you know, this is your second participation segment today. You will be trying to do that yourself. So as you can see, this is basically how it looks like in the assessment. So as you can see for the real words, there are no aliens next to it, so it's kind of graphic to help. And then you have your alien monster words, and you have some aliens in the side just to make it a bit more fun and a bit more obvious. So I'm just going to give you a couple of seconds to try that on your own, and then we're going to go through it together. Have fun! Okay, I hope that was enough time for you. It goes by a lot faster for the kids, so a bit of pressure, so you kind of know what it's like. So I'm going to go through the real words. Obviously, you know how to read those: grit, start, best, and hook. And then we have our alien monster words. So I'll give an example of what they might do. So for the first one, we will go butter, ahin, land, stuff, x, deck, test, hills, and then quote, s, and sequence. So those would be the kind of words your kids will be dealing with. They vary in levels, so they're for everyone. So I'll move on to the next section and we will continue.
Okay, now that you've had a go at our phonics screening, I hope you realize that it's not as easy as you think, having to segment and blend and chunk and decode all those different sounds. So you can imagine for your own child, it is quite difficult. The good news is we have some tips on how you can support your child at home. Now remember, these activities should be fun, fast-paced, and familiar. And the reason we want them to be fun and fast-paced and familiar is that we want the child to firstly give their full attention to you when you are doing these activities. And secondly, when something is fun and familiar, it makes it more memorable, it makes it more meaningful. And here are some ways that we suggest. You can get magnetic letters, and these are basically letters that you can stick on your fridge or a whiteboard if you have one at home. And you can kind of do this as a turn-taking activity or a game in which you create a word and then your child reads it, and then they create a word and you read it. And this way your child sees the importance since you are doing the activity with them, and they can see that you're trying as well. Another way is phonics flashcards. These are really great. You can go through these in a day. You can do a couple of sounds in a day. It can be quick and easy. You just flash a few cards, your child reads them and sounds them to you, and then maybe to take it further, you could think of words that start with the sound or words that may include those sounds. Lego word building is fun. Kids love things that are hands-on. And again, with the whole hands-on experience, it makes it more memorable for them and meaningful for them. So that's also a great way, especially if your child is more active and would prefer a more hands-on engaging activity. Whiteboard games are also really great. Hangman is a great game. You could also do, again, similarly to the magnetic letters, you could come up with words and see if you can guess each other's words or read each other's words. It could be fake and real, and it's also a great way for you to try those fake words and those alien words with your children. For those of you that go outdoors a lot or would prefer to use your home environment, the home environment is a great environment. Basically, you can do sound spotting, and that is when you could do a sound of the day. And when you're outdoors or indoors, you could look for things that may start with the sound or may include the sound. Again, this is quite a fun way to be interactive, and it can be a whole family game. Display focus sounds at home. This is a very easy way to get your child to make that connection between a phoneme, which is a sound, and a grapheme, which is the way the sound may look like in a text. It could be as simple as having the sounds written on a Post-it note and stuck around the house on things that may start with a sound. For example, your bed starts with B, so you could stick the B on your bed. Or D for door, for fridge. And this way your child can make that connection between the text and the sound and to see it being used in a more meaningful situation to them, or real life situation. Now, for parents, I know some of you are both working and may not be able to have the time or space to be making all these resources. So we've come up with a bunch of online resources for you as well, which the child can do independently. Online resources are also great for those of you that are EAL speakers and may not be as familiar with the phonetical sounds or phonics. So Alpha Blocks is a great way if you have Netflix or YouTube. It's a great program, teaches the sounds beautifully. Jolly Phonics is a great way of incorporating those sounds in song. And Mr. Thorns is an oldie but a goodie. He's been around for a long time, but he teaches the sounds very, very well. He adds a bit of humor in his videos, and also he shows words and ways that the sounds, again, can be found around the house, or ways that you can use the sound in text. Letters and Sound is a program that we subscribe to teach our phonics. So it's a good website to go to. It has games on there, which is also great, but it also can give you an idea of how we teach the sounds and the progression of the sounds that we teach. Another website which I'll add on for you is phonicsplay.uk, and this is a really great website because it also is done by the British Curriculum, which does the phonics screening. It has games on which you can play that helps you to test your knowledge and skills, or use your knowledge and skills of blending and segmenting. And it's quick and easy, and it's fun. Children love it. The kids in my class love it, so I'm sure your kids will love it too. Now, one of the most important things, and I cannot stress this enough, that you can do at home is to read to your child. Read to them every day. Read with them, read to them. Children love being read to, and it shows them the importance of the phonetical skill and using that in a real life situation. Again, you can read to them, you can get them to read to you. It is not, it doesn't have to be long, it doesn't have to be difficult. It could be a short book, a short poem, a text. And it's a great way to bond with your child and to show them that you find this as important as they find. I cannot stress enough, again, the importance of reading with your child. There are so many things that come with reading with your child. Whether you're being read to or reading to them, here are some things that some tips that we have for you to kind of follow when you're reading with your child, and some things that we find quite important. So for example, start with a prediction. What do you think will happen in the story? Get them to look at the cover, see if they can gauge anything from the title, from the picture. Can they infer what it might be about? Do they already know the story? Is it something new? It's a great way to get them started, get them warmed up, and to hear their thoughts. Another thing that you can do is to read with expression. Be dynamic, be expressive. How do you read those sentences with a question mark or an exclamation mark? It gives the children a bit of joy, and it shows the joy of reading to them as well. Ask questions. Use your who, what, when, where, why, and how questions. These are great questions to test and assess the kids' comprehensive skills, their inferential skills, and to really, really get down to whether the kids understand what they are reading. Inferential skills. Simple questions like, how do you know this? Why do you think this is happening? How did he feel? How did she feel? It's a great way to get the kids thinking further. What could be the subtext of the conversation? What could the emotions behind those texts be? And another thing, tricky words. Let them sound the words out themselves. I know it can be very tempting when your child is struggling with something or is having difficulty or finding it challenging to read a certain word and to just come in and read it for them. But try your hardest to let your child read it on their own. Because when your child is trying on their own and when they are able to decode it on their own, only then will they really remember what those words are, because they've accomplished it themselves. It gives them a great motivational boost and a self-esteem boost. So please give them that time. Now, this does not mean that if the child is truly struggling and is really unable to read the word and has asked for help, that you cannot step in. That's perfectly fine. But give them the time to try it themselves. Thank you so much. Now is the time to ask any questions if you have any, and Miss Caroline, Mr. Colin, and myself will be here to answer your questions. Okay, now that you've had...
Okay, so like I said, these are some extra resources that we've added on. There's also this one here at the bottom, which is Teach Your Monster to Read, which is a really good resource that Miss Mridula has provided us. I encourage you to explore these on your own and pick and choose and see which ones you enjoy and which ones work best for your family and your children. But yeah, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat now. We'll give you a couple of minutes to ruminate and think about what you just heard. And I hope this is helpful and useful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jinny and Mridula. As Jinny said, we'll give you a few minutes now just to think through, because I know there's lots of new information there. And if you have any questions, it doesn't matter, big or small, or if you think we've already mentioned it, it's okay. Feel free to ask again. We are here and we are really happy to answer any questions that you've got or offer suggestions. So please just put those in the chat, or if you would prefer to ask out loud, then you can unmute yourself and ask. And we'll just give you a few minutes now. Great, and I think Anita, is it the resource slide you're looking for? Just let me know if it's a different one. Awesome. And you may have noticed that we are recording this as well. So we will share the link afterwards, and we can share the physical slides so that you can go back and find any resources that you'd like, or any reminders, because we know that it moves quite quickly. Thank you, Anita. Thank you very much, Stanley. It was really enjoyable to share it all with you, be able to communicate with everybody. Okay, we've got one from Sally. If you have come from a different educational background, how long does it take kids to catch up to the anticipated grade levels? I will start on that one, and then Mridula and Jinny, please feel free to chip in. I think what we tried to show earlier, and what is very important to us, is to meet our students where they are at. We have some incredible students from lots of different backgrounds and lots of different languages, and it's one of the most special parts of Middleton. We always want that to be a celebration and not something that holds our students back. So we do, as we showed you earlier, we do kind of attach a phase to a particular grade level, but that will be quite loose, and every class teacher uses rigorous assessment to work out where their students are at. So if a student comes in with no phonics knowledge or very little phonics knowledge, then we will make sure that that student is met and starts at phase 1 and phase 2. And teachers are very good at running smaller sessions so that they can, again, make sure that different students who might be working at different phases all get the input that they need. And I think that the class teacher is a really good person to touch base with there if you're not sure where your child is at. Mridula or Jinny, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
Not much. I think that was basically the gist of it. I think just to agree with what Ken, I think there are a lot of things that go into how fast the child can catch up or can keep up with the program. If you're a second language speaker, there's also all of that as well, or like you said, like a different background. So again, the assessments do help us as well. It gives us a good gauge and so we can go from there. We're not so much worried about how fast they will catch up, but more of where we can take them from where they are. So you'd be surprised that even with the different schooling backgrounds, there are certain foundational skills that do help a child pick up certain things faster. So it's more of where they are and how do we meet them where they are and push them forward. So that's more of our philosophy with phonics.
Yeah, thank you, Jinny.
I just want to add to that, yeah, I agree with all that's been said. And also that as classroom teachers, we spend extra time with the child when the others are working on a comprehension activity or a guided reading spelling activity. Also, we do work with the EL teachers, and together we work towards meeting the child at the stage where they are at and to build on their abilities from there on. So we do work very closely with the EL teachers if the child is in the program at school, and then we work together to build up their skills from there. So.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Okay, we've got another good question here about sight words. When a child comes across a sight word like you or the, and phonics doesn't apply, what are the students expected to do? That's a great question. Mridula, would you mind sharing a little bit about how we approach sight words?
Yes, yeah, I wanted to mention that when I was doing my section and slipped my mind, apologies for that. But yeah, so every phase that we do in grade 1, we do introduce sight words along with each phase, and every week we have a new set of sight words that we work with the child, and this is taught separately from phonics. It is taught during guided reading, where the child works with activities, maybe writing sentences with them, maybe drawing them on a rainbow and coloring them out. Basically, these are words that don't follow the phonics rules, and they are taught separately. They all my grade 1 parents will know that sight words are sent home every week as home learning as well, where the child gets to practice them at home as well. So every phase comes with its own list of tricky words, or sight words as we call them, and we introduce them to the child along with the phonic sounds. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you, Mridula. Yeah, so there's set sight words that go with each phase, and those can be accessed on letters and sounds as well. Okay, another question from Purvi, which was, we would like to know more about long and short vowel sounds. Are there any specific resources that we can refer to? Jinny, is there anything you want to share about long and short vowel sounds?
So, yeah, I know it can be very confusing because there's so many rules with phonics. My best advice would be, if you are unsure, you can approach your teacher, your child's teacher. That's one way to do it. But again, even with the resources that we've given you, like the Mr. Thorne's phonics, or even the Letters and Sounds website, it does give you a better idea of how we teach that and when we teach certain things. Because we try not to overload them with everything at one go, because I think that's a lot for them to take in. So there is a specific way that we teach them, a specific progression. So I would highly recommend to firstly go on the Letters and Sounds website and look at the way we teach the phases. And if there are any sounds that you are unsure about, I will go on the online resources like Mr. Thorne or Alpha Block, and they can kind of give you a list of help with how you can teach the sounds. I'm not sure. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you. I think what you said there about not overloading the students is really key. It can be tempting to introduce everything at once, but that's why, you know, it's organized into phases. So if the child is at this stage of learning just the short vowel sound, then let them really become comfortable with that first. Right, another question from Carly, which is great, about the phases seem quite early. So the philosophy has changed slightly about introducing the ABCs, and different systems approach it differently. But with letters and sounds, we introduce the sounds at the same time as they are seeing the written letter form as such. So, you know, they may sing and they may engage with the ABCs and kind of hear those letters at an early stage, but they're also learning the sound as well. So they kind of go hand in hand, Carly, for us. And which is why they start with in K1 rather than they learn, you know, how to write the letters and how to say A, B, C, etc., and then learning phonics. So it's a little bit of a change in order for us, and it's been very effective so far. But we are obviously here if you've got more questions about that. Right, I think there is another question about the sound J or G. Garden and giraffe. That's a really good question. Mridula, what's your take on how to best explain the different sound G in garden and giraffe?
Yeah, so can you hear me? Yeah,
yes.
Yeah, so when we teach sounds, we focus on the sound the letter makes, the grapheme makes. So initially we will not be talking about giraffe. This is in, you know, the beginning stages. We teach them words which make the sound of the letter that is G. And then when the child, at least that's how I would approach it. I don't know if Miss Jinny and Miss Caroline. And then when the child is able to read, I think what happens in grade 1 is by the time they are confident of their reading skills, they can recognize certain words that don't follow the rules. And also with a word like giraffe, they see the picture of the giraffe. So if in a story and they see the picture of the giraffe, they know that's a giraffe. So they get to read the word by looking at the picture, and that's how they make the connection. It's not so much by sounding the word out, as if that makes sense. So words like giraffe are more learned by looking at pictures in a picture book, and not by actually sounding them out. And I think giraffe is a tough word for them to spell anyway, and that's not something we teach because it does not follow the phonics rules. So in grade 1, if there's a story with giraffe in it, most of the children will be able to see the picture and recognize that's a giraffe. And it is not taught during the phonics lesson. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, thank you, Mridula. I've always loved conversations like that with students because the students end up laughing about the English language and all of the exceptions that there are, and there are lots of weird and wonderful exceptions. So I think you'll find a lot of grade 1 students going, oh, it's just so complex, isn't it? So it kind of sounds like that we kind of have to muddle through when the rules don't apply. Great, we had a question about, we're having issues, Cara says, we're having issues with TR and ch. Any ideas on how to tackle that? Jinny or Mridula, any bright ideas? Jinny?
Yeah, so when I obviously, like with the math and all that, things have gotten a bit muffledy and weird with pronunciation and enunciation of certain sounds. The way I do it, I make it really purposeful when I say the sound. So what we would do, and I make the children do, kind of emphasize the sound a little bit more. So you kind of like, instead of going tr, I always tell them to think about your teeth and your tongue and where you're placing it. So with tr, your teeth don't really touch. So I tell them, like, if your teeth are touching, you're doing, and the air that comes out is slightly different as well. So yeah, what I tend to say is make it, sometimes if you break the sound up a little more and do it slowly instead of rushing it, and if you say it louder than the other sounds, it actually helps as well. So when I do so we'll do it tough first so that they know that the tough is in the front, and the rest is and then we go. So I'll be like, you make sure when you say you have more air coming out. It's like you're chasing something. So I kind of do it that way with them. Sometimes it takes a bit more time because obviously they've got into a habit of saying things a certain way. So it's just making sure that when we do catch them, they're like, okay, can you try that again? We'll do it together. And I do it with them because sometimes we make them do it on their own. They get a bit embarrassed and they don't want to do it. So I try to do it with them to show them. And I purposely make my mouth wider or bigger so they can see it in front of them. And now that we have no mask, it makes it a lot easier. So I hope that answers and helps them.
Yeah, can I add to that? I agree with Jinny. It's to model how you would say the word, and it was tough for the last 2 years with the mask on, I must admit. We also can use the sound buttons if for grade ones, if you're going to write the word out and then ask the child to add the sound buttons on their whiteboards so they exactly sound each phoneme out separately, and then they will be able to tell the difference between ch and r. Yeah, so sound button is a great way to help them know the difference.
Yeah, thank you. Those are great answers. Potentially an action as well, depending on which part they're struggling with. If there's something that they love that uses at the beginning, like a train, maybe doing that action. And also remembering that, as Jinny said, it's tough, particularly the consonant sounds can be very tough for some students to say. So just giving them time and making sure that, we continue to model it. Great, I think those are all of our questions. If I've missed one, then please, oh, perfect, we've got one more, that's great. Okay, does the school share the results of the periodic phonics assessments tests? It would be great feedback for parents to support on the specific areas for the child. Yeah, currently we don't have a system where we fix a time to share it, but you are more than welcome to get in touch with your classroom teacher and ask them, because I agree, it's really helpful for you to know exactly what sounds you can focus on with your child. So yeah, I think get in touch with your classroom teacher and they will be the best ones to guide you with the sounds they're very comfortable with and maybe what they need a little bit more support with. Thank you very much. Okay, I think that's everything. We will be online for another couple of minutes. So if a question pops into your head, like we've just had one, then feel free to ask it. But if not, I just wanted to say a huge thank you to Miss Mridula and Miss Jinny for joining me. And thank you so much to all of you for your participation and your great questions, because it really helps us to grow and to learn. So if you need to get about your day, then please go for it. And then we will answer Mayumi's question here. Okay, can you share the sound maps of phase 2, 3, and 5? Yeah, and we have one for 4 as well. Definitely. So these are all, again, you'll be able to find these on the Letters and Sounds website, and your class teacher will also have them. But what I will try and do is download them and attach them to the Bloom's post when I share the recording as well, so that you've got them there, because that would be a helpful resource. Thank you, Mayumi. Okay, right, we'll give everybody else another minute, but if you need to get on with your day, then thank you so much for joining us. It's much appreciated. Thank you, Amrita. Yeah, I will definitely share.